Thank you. Thanks very much. Okay, so this is joint work with Lasse, Jess, and Dean. Let me give you a bit of a background. So basically, this is going to be about the impacts that savings account can have on increased agricultural investment. Okay, so the puzzle basically is that our returns to investment are high, in particular agriculture, especially fertilizer. One way to boost fertilizer adoption in developing countries is being the use of government programs. Malawi has a program, Tanzania has a program. Very expensive. They're a drain on budgetary resources that are low to begin with. And so without continued support, the case of Malawi, both Malawi and Tanzania are actually supported by the bank, by the World Bank. So without this donor support, they would be unsustainable. Okay, so how do you basically use financial markets to foster farm output? Well, there's several things you can do. And being talked about this, you can insure farmers against adverse events. So this is something that we did in everything. So in Malawi already, where we provided contingent loans versus uncontingent loans, and we saw that if you provide, the fear is that people may be reluctant to take on loans because they fear having to repay when the harvest has been bad. And so if you provide a contingent loan that basically pays, the insurance kicks in when the output is bad, this would basically increase demand. Turns out that was not what we found, but maybe the conditions were special with the lender in that the lender was already provided implicit insurance, because the downside of not repaying the loan was not that high. You can also facilitate credit in a country like Malawi, where there's no unique ID system, and so one way to do that is through biometric identification. So you improve identification, and that allows banks to use dynamic incentives. Okay, and so one way to do that is if you have a good identification system, then the borrower knows that if they default, that's going to be it with the bank. There's not going to be a future loan. Okay, and so that imposes discipline on the borrower that will try to make sure that they repay. And that's exactly what we find, especially among those guys that were more likely to default. Okay. The other thing you can do is basically encourage savings, and this is basically what we're doing this paper. Okay. So this is the agricultural cycle. You have the harvest in May, June, July. You have planting in November, December, and then you have the hungry season in February, March. And so the idea is that you want to span savings between harvest and planting. Okay, because once the harvest kicks in, these guys get tons of cash, and they basically, by the time you get to the planting, there's no more money around. Okay, so again, this can be a catch-all excuse, but when you ask farmers, hey, why don't you use fertilizer if it's so productive, they just say, well, I just don't have the money. Okay, so how do you bridge resources from the harvest to planting? And one way is to use savings, and in particular a commitment account, basically where you allow farmers to restrict the money, to block the money until a pre-specified time, and so that's exactly what we did. And so the questions are basically we want to tackle is, number one, what is the impact of providing access to savings? Does actually offering a specific account that has commitment features have an effect over and beyond a standard savings account? And if so, if there is a difference between offering a commitment, if there's an impact of offering a savings account with commitment features, what are the specific mechanisms underlying that impact? Okay. Now, why do we focus on commitment savings? Well, it's a proposed mechanism. It basically, if people have time inconsistent preferences, then it's a way of basically restricting own choices, so that when you're flooded with this cash, you basically don't squander it. Okay. So what we're going to do in practice is basically we're going to allow customers at harvest, pre-harvest time, to basically open up an account and then decide how much money you want transferred to that account of the overall proceeds from the harvest, how much you want to put there, and then also you specify when you want these funds to be used. Okay, so the release date, and lo and behold, actually the release date basically coincides to about pre-harvest. Pre-planting. Okay, so the majority of farmers that opened this commitment account actually wanted the money right before planting. Okay. Now, at the end of the day, it's a commitment account, right? So you're restricting choices. So there's a non-trivial welfare question here, right? So on the one hand, you're locking funds to be used for an investment purpose, but you may actually be subject to shocks along the way, and so you may actually need this money for a family emergency and whatnot. And so you know, a commitment account actually makes you less able to respond to shock, right? That's the idea that, you know, if everybody was rational and there were no imperfections, this would be a very bad product because actually you're putting restrictions. Okay, so the net impact is going to be it's unclear. Okay, the net impact the welfare gain basically of offering such an account. Okay, now there's two. So commitment solves a self-control problem, and this is a lot of the theories looked at that. Dean, of course, has worked extensively on that. But there's also this other issue that is now also becoming more and more prevalent. That actually is also solved by the commitment account. And that's the problem of the other control problem. Especially, and this is especially relevant in Africa, where basically, you know, if you have a bumper harvest, you have a very good harvest, you're gonna have all your neighbors and friends lining up your door and basically knocking on the door and basically wanting you to share resources. Okay. Now, if you have a commitment account, then you have the perfect excuse, right? When they come knocking on your door, they say, "I'm sorry, but just, you know, my money's locked away. Sorry, you know, would love to, but can't really." Okay. And so in a way, sort of it solves potentially both problems. Okay. So what do? We're going to be working with tobacco farmers. And, you know, the fact that they grow tobacco is not important, but what is important about tobacco is that there's a unique buyer. Okay, so all the tobacco that gets produced in Malawi gets shipped to centralized locations, auction floors, and so basically this allows us to then establish a link between the buyer and the lender and a financial institution, where money gets transferred there. If they have loans, then, you know, the loans get repaid, but then the funds are sitting in either a group account or an individual account if they have one. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is basically opening a bunch of individual accounts for these farmers that are for these farmers. So farmers actually are going to be organized in groups of 15 to 20 guys. They're called clubs. And again, so I mentioned that. So basically, you know, our intervention basically takes advantage of this direct deposit system, right? So savings are going to be, the default's going to be you're going to have money in the savings accounts, as opposed to you having, you know, being paid cash and then actually savings. And you know, clearly you know, we could have very different effects because the default option is different. Okay. So, okay, so what's going to be, so this is going to be an RCT. We're going to use these 300 groups, and we're going to separate them into two groups. You know, the treatment is going to be basically for the treatment group, there's going to be some help in opening individual accounts, and then, you know, once the tobacco sold, it's going to be transferred into those accounts. And then there's three, so two treatment groups and one control. The two treatment groups, one is just going to have ordinary savings accounts, so that's just standard checking account. So basically, you know, the day after you get the money deposited, you can go to the bank and withdraw it. There's also going to be a group that are going to be offered two accounts, so the ordinary account plus a commitment account. And what they had to do pre-harvest is basically decide how much money they wanted into the commitment account the following way. They basically specified a threshold above which money would start flowing into the commitment account. Okay, so first the money goes into the ordinary account, and then when the money is higher than this threshold, then the money starts flowing into the commitment account, they also had to decide the target date, so when they wanted the funds to be free up. Okay, now, so all clubs were given a financial education session on savings and budgeting, okay, so randomization was at the club level, so everybody was offered, everybody in the club was offered these types of accounts. Okay, so let me just run through what we find. So the offer of commitment, so the group that was offered both commitment and ordinary had substantial effects, had substantial impacts on savings prior to next planting season, but more importantly, key outcomes of investment. Okay, so we see increases in agricultural inputs used, increases in crop output, and interestingly, increases in household expenditure during the lean season. Okay, so basically they were able to save up, and so they were able basically to consume more for the lean season, the lean season after they've used the savings for that led to the increase in output. Okay, when you offer just a standard ordinary account, you don't see these. So that the effects, the impacts for this group, the group is only offered the checking account, is not statistically different from that of the control group. And I guess the main finding, so if you want to, the one takeaway from the paper is that actually the impacts from the commitment account do not come from the literally tying of hands that the commitment account provides. And why is that? It's because actually very little money went into these commitment accounts. Remember that I told you that there was this threshold above which money would start flowing into the commitment account. It turns out actually that all the farmers had pretty bad expectations about what the price of tobacco was going to be that season. In fact, the price of tobacco ended up being a lot lower. That meant that a lot less money came into the accounts, and so most of the money went to the ordinary accounts, the checking accounts. Very little money flowed into the commitment accounts, and therefore, it cannot be that the impact of the commitment account was because these guys did not have access to this money. It has to be something else. Okay. No. So if it's not a self-control problem, then what is it, right? And here's where we just don't we just don't know, basically. So we cannot rule out that this is because of other control problems, or it could be mental accounting problems, and we'll hopefully we can go through that. So anyway, boring, but this is what we run. Okay, yeah. So I've not told you. Sorry, crisscross this design. There was a raffle. The idea was to basically give tickets either in a public fashion, so where everybody in the group would know what the balances were, or privately. But basically, because there was so little money in these accounts, and there was so little balance, between harvest and planting, that basically, I think we're underpowered for this raffle. So basically, we look at the effects of raffle, we don't find much. So I just want you to focus on either the commitment and ordinary. But this basically, because these are randomized, we can just run the specification. We're going to be controlling for baseline controls. So let me tell you what. So these are basically the results. So first, we can look at any transfer into the accounts, and basically we find that there's a sort of an increase in transfers. I mean, 20% if you have a commitment account, 60% if you have an ordinary account, relative to a control of 0. So basically, we have a control, we didn't open accounts, and nobody wanted to open accounts, and no money flew into those accounts. So now, in terms of direct deposit, in terms of amounts, we're talking about 21,000 kwacha. And this is basically, here's where you see that most of the money went into the ordinary accounts as opposed to the commitment account. So only about 2,000 kwacha went into the commitment accounts, whereas, close to 20,000 went to the ordinary accounts. Again, most money went to the ordinary accounts. Okay? So now, pretty much soon after the money was transferred, the money was taken out, except for, of course, the money in the commitment accounts that was there, but again, there's very little. Okay. So again, the other thing is that the money did not stay in the bank. Okay. The money flows in, the money flows out. Okay. All right. Now, so what are the impacts? So we see actually an increase in land cultivation. We see an increase in total value of inputs. And by the way, so the increase in the value of inputs roughly corresponds to the amounts that these guys saved, right? So they saved 20,000 and they increased investment by 16,000. Okay. This leads to a crop output of 34,000. No changes in profits. Again, this could be a power issue, positive but not statistically significant, and a significant increase in total expenditures, about 2,000. Basically 30 days, in the last 30 days, but the survey was done around the time of the lean season, okay? So anyway, if you want to test jointly, that these impacts are different between ordinary and commitment, you get a p-value of 108, whereas just ordinary only is not statistically different from 0, okay? So okay, so fine. Okay, so there's a change. What are the pathways, right? So again, the initial hypothesis where the funds are locked up and can be accessed, and so basically, you would solve the self-control as well as other control problems, and the distribution of commitment is consistent with this. But basically, I said this cannot be true because most of the funds ended up in the ordinary account and not the commitment account. Okay, so this is again, just showing you that most of the money goes to the ordinary account and not the commitment account. Okay, so what can be? Now there's the other control story, right? So the fact that you just have this excuse to turn down requests. Well, we went to the data and we asked a bunch of questions on transfers. Now I have to say transfers were asked. So we. Of course, you design surveys better when you know what you're looking for. But so we did not ask very carefully the timing of the transfers, right? We were interested in transfers between harvest and planting. We did the survey, after harvest of the following season, and so it's unclear. Anyway, bottom line, we don't find any change in transfers, but we cannot, we cannot say anything about transfers in the period we were interested in. Now, however, there could be a story of anticipated consumption, and this is something that Jess Goldberg, one of the co-authors, has been working on, which is basically quite simple. The idea is, look, if I know I'm going to have a bunch of guys knocking on my door, the minute I have the money, I go on a shopping spree, right? So I buy a bunch of stuff. I don't have money at home, but basically, when the guys come and say, sorry, I just don't have money. So basically, I'm not, I just don't have money laying around. So this, if that is true, then we would see no change in transfers, right? Because the control guys would not have any transfer because they spend everything fast, whereas the treated guys actually did not engage in anticipatory consumption, but would not have transfers because they actually were saving money. So this could be a possibility. We just don't have direct evidence for this. Okay. Okay. Now there's other mechanisms, and that's the following. So everybody was given the same financial literacy treatment in terms of budgeting and whatnot. However, the commitment group was actually told, okay, you need to decide how much money you want to put into this commitment account. And this, unfortunately, was only done with the commitment group. Okay, so one can think that the mere act of thinking about, okay, allocating this much money for the commitment account would trigger a sense of, okay, this is, mentally, this is how much money I need to put into this account, this is how much money I want to set aside for savings, and this is perhaps what could have driven the result. There's also the idea that if you think about sort of along the lines of prospect theory, well, maybe just thinking about savings for investment, you're basically changing you're changing the reference point, you're increasing the reference point, and therefore people are basically just saving more so that you know, because they don't want to basically, you know, if they're loss averse, they don't want to, you know, they don't want to fall short of what they felt, right? So the idea again is that the commitment account actually increases the reference point for savings, and because you're loss averse, you actually want to save more. Look, at the end of the day, you know, these could have a bite, and we don't know. So just to conclude, so what we find is basically the commitment account did actually have substantive effects, not only on balances but also on stuff we care about. So it has you know, real investment and consumption implications. This is not due to another control problem, at least not due to the fact that the commitment account ties the hands of the farmers, because again, no money was there, but we cannot rule out other. So it could be another control story, or it could be other types of channels.
Hi, my name is Ole. So first of all, I really hated reading this paper. Because, so in a second I'll talk about randomization myself, but this paper is so clearly written. And I mean the literature review just puts the hammer exactly on the nail of commitments where it's supposed to be, and the experiment is set up exactly to test this, and the specification is so clear, and the results are like transparent, and so it's really going to be difficult to follow up on that. So the stuff I'm going to say now is just kind of some footnotes, I guess you can say. So first of all, my take on the result is this. If we thought that self-control problems were the main barrier to savings for agriculture, well, then we were wrong. So clearly, here's an example of a very useful non-result. Right? There's all this evidence saying massive self-control problems, big problems in financing agriculture. These two things are probably connected. Commitment accounts are used by exactly these people with self-control problems, and this basically shows, okay, it's certainly here it doesn't. So fundamentally, that's useful and interesting. Then there are some issues. I mean, the key issue, of course, is this thing that the mechanism is, we can't just get at the mechanism, but sometimes it's just like that. Anyway, so I think you asked two questions. What's the impact of savings accounts, and what's the impact of commitment accounts? And I want to comment just on two things. First on external validity, and then on the kind of theory-based versus intervention-based. And here's my first thing on external validity, where we can say, okay, these results, can they be used outside of OIBM, which is the institution that's implementing this stuff? And then I think, so these two general questions kind of seem, okay, we have to in general answer what's the impact of savings accounts, and in general we have to answer what's the impact of commitment account. But here there's, I think that what I'm kind of struck by is all of these people that offer these savings accounts, all of them have joint liability loan already. And so I think if you are offered a commitment savings account, that must matter somehow. That you're in a group with some people that you have a joint liability loan. So it's not just an extra account that you offer people, but an extra account on top of the joint liability loan. And I'm kind of thinking, so how would that, like if I were to do this in another setting, then I would need joint liability loans for it to work in a similar. Anyway, so this question is, could this work? So secondly, is the external validity inside OIBM? So if we imagine we should give recommendation for the bank, should they implement these commitment accounts in other places in Malawi, in northern Malawi. This is central Malawi. And there I think there's also some issues. So, as you say, active take-up of commitment accounts is 21%. So I know you write somewhere that the exclusion restriction doesn't hold, so we can't just, we can't get to like how much the 21% are actually saving. So, nevertheless, if you do a little bit of backup of the envelope, IV calculations, if the exclusion restriction holds and there are then these 21% should deposit 100,000 Malawi kwacha. It's just kind of simple. I think anglers call it the Bloom result, right? You just divide basically by the octave. So that's equal to, from your own calculations on the LSMS in Malawi, 3 years of average consumption. So it's a very large amount. So, and that basically tells us maybe there's some essential heterogeneity here. Something I think Heckman came up with 30 years ago. So, and the basic point is, when you have self-selection, then it's the richer farmers that are choosing this product. And so what I would like to know is, you're implementing it in central Malawi. I've been to Malawi several times. I know central Malawi is one of the richer regions. Will you find this rich farmers also elsewhere? Because that's where you kind of have the effect. So I would like to hear a little bit more about if these treated people, if there are people like them in other places. So the second thing, I think there's maybe a discussion of whether you are trying to recover a deep parameter of commitment or you're testing a replicable treatment. So recovering a deep parameter, basically, I would like some kind of model. And that's particularly because of this joint liability thing. So, so with some testicle implications, like what exactly are we testing here? And the second thing I think I talked about, are we testing a replicable treatment? I think you have a really admirable description of the intervention. I almost feel like we go out and do it. Probably here in Portugal it's not going to be so popular. But on the other hand, you have this joint liability group. And maybe you can easily answer this. It doesn't matter, but at least, yeah, that's my concern. Okay, finally, if you are generally in favor of what you could call the medical turn in development economics, then here are 3 suggestions. So I know that you got funding from this research from the World Bank Research Committee and the Gates Foundation. So in those proposals, you must have specified some outcomes, and you could list those. Also, you could talk a little bit about how did you ensure that people actually followed this guide? Like, did you do anything to do that? And I would also like to know a little bit about exactly how did you randomize? Like, did you draw things out of a hat, or like, how did it do? And then finally, so I think it's an absolutely interesting result, but as you said, the question is, why do we see a huge effect in the ordinary accounts when it's not commitment? And then I guess my last point will just be, it's never too late to send in the anthropologist. I mean, can you get to meet somewhere else on like what's going on? It's really a lot. Thank you. Here are some references.
Maybe we could collect a couple of questions and then.
Sure.
So I'd like to ask the author, I was a bit puzzled by one thing you said, which was that that people might use their saving, their account, the non-commitment account, so that if there's social networks going on, neighbor comes to your door, he claims that he had a bad study happening to him, either he had or he didn't, doesn't matter. But why should it make any difference that you have the money in an account other than just below your pillow? It's private information if you have money or not for you. I mean, even if they know you had a good crop the other year, they know that they might know your neighbor that you have money. Okay, but how do they know if you have it under your pillow or in a non-commitment account? Why should this make a difference? It's private information.
Did you consider randomizing the ceiling on the ordinary account? Because if you randomize the ceiling on the ordinary account, so suppose that the ceiling went down, then what you'd expect is that you have a bigger Lagrange multiplier. So the marginal utility of consumption today goes up. In a 2-period model, you need to increase consumption in the second period for your first order condition to continue to hold, and therefore you expect, I just want to make sure I wasn't say something stupid here, and you expect savings to go up, ceteris paribus. That would be a way also, right, of trying to figure out what the mechanism was, at least excluding a mechanism which was going through the sort of the fact that the Lagrange multiplier, this flexibility, is absolutely no.
Just a quick question. One of the results you showed that there was an increase in expenditure. Were you able to maybe follow up after the experiment or after the treatments to check how to decompose some of these expenditures to see?
Oh. Yeah.
Because that helps to explain some of them.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So well, thanks a lot for the comments and the questions. Let me take them actually in reverse order. In terms of expenditures, actually, this is actually food expenditures. So mostly it's food expenditures. In fact, we only asked about.
Because there's total expenditures in the regression.
Yeah, but okay. So if it says we have somewhere else broken it down, the bulk of it is food. It's food expenditures. In terms of so the short answer, Jean-Louis, is that no, we didn't. We let these guys choose what his trigger was. I don't. So what you would do is basically you would provide. Yeah, if you can, if you're randomizing the ceiling, basically you're making in a way these accounts more or less. If I think about overall savings, you're making the commitment to be more or less, to buy more or less, right? So now if you put it very low so that most of it goes to the commitment account, then actually, you're gonna have issues. So
you have very little.
So I think again for the self-control problem, you would have you would definitely have an effect because more or less money goes into that. But basically, what we find is that even with no money going there, you still have impacts, right? So again, it's not so much that the money sits in that account until a pre-specified amount, but basically that somehow you manage to invest more by just having that account.
But you want to be able to exclude the fact that it isn't coming, right? But what I'm saying is that if you could also establish, even if there is money in these accounts,
right,
you still don't have the effect. That's even stronger. Suppose you got a really counterintuitive result where when there's no money in the accounts, you get the effect you get, and when there is money in the accounts, you don't get it.
Oh, I see. Oh, okay.
That would be really cool, right?
Right. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yes. We don't. Yeah, we don't. Right. But actually, I guess this links back to the previous question, which is the private information. So everybody knows whether or not you had a good harvest. And in fact, we did some cross reports on income and people, or on production, and people knew that. Again, these are tobacco farmers, so at least within the group, everybody knows how much money they've made, right? The question is, when you have somebody knocking on your door, you actually showed up. You could basically say, look, all my money's in my commitment account, this new account, even if it's in the savings account. Actually, there was some anecdotal evidence recalls from focus group that they say, if you went to say, sorry, I don't have it under my pillow, it's actually in the, in a standard checking account. They'll say, oh, well, you can take it out whenever you want, right? All you got to do is walk to the bank. So it is private information, but in a way, I guess the social norm actually is that if there's money at home, you gonna.
Why would it make a difference behind how we fire an account? If it's a non-commitment account.
So sorry, are you saying between money at home and money in the commitment versus?
If it's in a non-commitment account,
Yeah.
why does that make any difference versus behind?
Because folks know that you can go and withdraw the money.
Right. Why would it make a difference then giving an excuse to the neighbor who is in a commitment account?
No. Okay, no. They don't know what the savings are, but they know that you have a commitment account, right? I mean, of course, you're not going to reveal that all the money's in the checking account, but you do have a commitment account. So it does provide the excuse for you to say, actually, all my money's locked up.
That's okay, because you have an account.
That's right.
But having a non-commitment account also doesn't make a difference relative to having it under the pillow, because it's private information for you.
Beautiful, and that's exactly what we find.
Okay.
That's exactly what we find.
So the neighbor wouldn't want to see, what it means, the neighbor wouldn't want to see how much of your money is in the commitment versus the...
Oh, the neighbor would love to see that. I mean, you're not going to tell him. I mean, if you believe the story, right? That's right. Now, we actually try to ask we didn't ask. Sorry. There was thought of asking, across reports about how much money was in the ordinary or commitment. And we only asked about overall balances. So anyway, that didn't work. Because it was done in the context of the raffle, but because there was, attendance in these raffles was not. And again, we don't know who the neighbors are that actually come and knock on the door. So, there's actually definitely more work that could be done along these lines. No, what I'll tell you though is that again, in focus groups, people were more selective about who they gave the money to, I think, right? And so in some cases, there was one guy that had a sister that always was, begging for money, and actually said, look, I had this account, and basically told them, that I didn't have money. Whereas, the neighbor came also had the daughter that was basically, sick, and he never falls, the guy's good. I mean, he never asks for money, so I went ahead and gave him money, right? So it provides some flexibility. But, I mean, beyond that, so just to, I guess, one point, because so I completely agree on the external validity point about, look, I mean, the setup is special in that there's direct deposit and joint liability. To me, I mean, joint liability, I don't see how joint liability would affect savings, but I can definitely see a clear story for why direct deposit would, if anything, enhance the effects of savings, right? I mean, it's going to be very different if you give cash to people and expect these guys to deposit money than if money's already deposited on their bank account, right? So if we had this setup without direct deposit, then results could have been different, right? But in terms of the joint liability, I mean, all you care about is how much money how much money actually flows into these accounts once the loan has been repaid. Not so much whether there's a repayment to be made beforehand or whether there's joint versus individual. I mean, this could affect maybe the knowledge that people have about balances but maybe we can talk a bit about that.
No, yeah, sure. So I guess I was thinking something in the lines of.
Otherwise, we won't have time to talk. Thank you.
Oh, you have.
Sorry? You yourself.
Right. So this is fortunate because I think Xavier laid it ground very nicely. Because basically my presentation is an attempt to give a different answer to some of the same problems. And so this is joint work with Helene, who's sitting right here, and then Chris will join us. We're testing community-managed microfinance in cluster randomized trial. Here's my agenda. I will give a short introduction, then I'll talk to you about the intervention we're implementing. Then I'll give you some information about our research design, the experimental design, the questionnaire. Then I'll do some baseline characteristics. I'll give you the results, and then some conclusions. So first to the introduction. Well, here's kind of the framework. If you look at microfinance clients, this is microfinance clients, no matter the type of microfinance over the last 20 years, you can see a tremendous increase. So this is just to say, okay, if it's 10 years since you looked out the window to see if there's a lot of microfinance, then look again, it's all over. So there are like just unconditionally good reasons to pay attention to it, and that's also what a lot of people are doing, obviously. So what this graph doesn't say is what type of microfinance is this. And it's pretty clear from what we know about this type of global microfinance that most of it is urban or peri-urban institutions that extend loans to trading and small businesses. So rural finance, in particular in low population density settings, doesn't show anything like this. We don't have good data on it, but I would kind of imagine it. It's still at least a huge challenge. And for some of the reasons that Xavier already mentioned, monitoring is just much more costly. Like in Bangladesh, the Grameen Bank is going around on bicycles. If you look at the schedule of a credit officer like that, he will visit like 200 people in just one day because he can just bike around and see everybody. In rural Africa, you just can't do that. Transaction costs are just prohibitively high just to go and, like for the farmers, to go to the branch, or for the credit people to go to the farmers. Loan periods for agriculture are just longer, so it's more difficult to monitor, and also agriculture might be more sensitive to covariance. So these are some of the challenges. So the intervention I'm going to present in a little bit might meet some of those challenges, and here are some theoretical arguments for why that might be. So the first one is this theory by Diamond on financial intermediation, where it's basically saying that what banks do is to organize delegated monitoring. So banks can make monitoring of loans more efficient than if we were just all in autarky individually lending to each other. And so the point here being, whether you will put this as a market failure or not is, I guess, a debate of words, but certainly financial intermediation requires institutions. And if you can improve these institutions, well, then there's a chance you will get better financial intermediation. So there are some other theoretical reasons why credit might not work very well. So the well-known one about information asymmetries, and also problems with self-control that we have discussed in depth, I guess. But kind of for this purpose, creating more efficient financial intermediation might be key. So here are the two research questions. Can improved financial intermediation lead to increased access to finance through mobilization of local funds in rural areas? So what we'll try to do is not to introduce anything from the outside, but simply figure out a way to mobilize funds that you kind of imagine lie under the mattress or stored in a very, not very well-performing cow, as Dean was talking about earlier, or wherever you have those funds. Can you mobilize that and make it available in the rural setting? And secondly, of course, will such increased access to local finance lead to increases in household well-being? So just to go fast forward, the answer to question number one is a very large and significant yes. And the answer to question number two is a very small and very uncertain, perhaps in a little while, yes. So, the intervention is something called Village Savings and Loan Association. So it's basically a version of a ROSCA, if you know that. So it's groups of 15 to 25 people that basically meet every week, and then they save in a cash box that looks like this. This is the cash box, and there's an NGO setting up this group together with them, giving them or selling them this cash box, and then teaching them how to manage their own funds. And so managing their own funds is both savings. You can see these stamps is people buying shares. So instead of savings, you can conceptualize it as buying shares, and when you buy one share, you get one stamp. And then after a while, when people have bought a lot of shares and saved, all of the money is in the cash box, then people start lending out to each other. So why doesn't this happen automatically? Why is it different from a ROSCA? Well, we think there are two major differences. So one is flexibility. This cash box just fills up with money, and then you can take a loan of the amount you need at the time you need, conditional on the money in the cash box. So in ROSCAs, if you're familiar with that, basically you receive the pool when it's your turn. So there's not the same flexibility. The second thing is accountability. So we believe that ROSCAs are sensitive to lead capture, that there might be some village chief that can do stuff with the rules and then maybe get some of the funds. Here you can see there are 3 locks on the cash box. Those 3 keys to those 3 locks are given to 3 different people. So if we're a group here, 3 different people get each a key, and the box can only be opened when everybody's together. So if I'm a village chief, I want to take money out of the box, then I have to convince 4 people, because there's a 4th person actually having the box. And that's more difficult than other things. So a lot of other accountability features a little bit similar, like elections and constitutions and special ways of counting the money, all kinds of things that we think makes it basically less money distributed. Okay, so the way I'm going to answer these questions is, will take-up and usage of village savings and loan associations exist when we try to promote this, when we try to basically set up institutions that make financial intermediation more efficient? Will it then be used? Will it happen? And then the second one, of course, will we see then an effect on pre-specified? So, Carlan is also testing exactly the same the same methodology. So this study is basically just one, together with Carlin's, one of the first rigorous impact assessments of this method. I should say also, it's extremely widely used. So we know of 60,000 of these groups just in Africa, and 60,000 is the number that we can pin down. We know exactly where they are. So there's likely to be many more. So it's very, very widely used. Okay, so the research design. Here's the basic setup. This is the time. You can see there's just a little more than 2 years. And above the timeline you have the intervention, and underneath you have some research stuff. And you can see we started both treatment and villages, control villages, by conducting an awareness campaign, sort of tell everybody what's this about. And we do that in both villages because here at this point we want to identify, we want to ask the villagers who are interested. A large issue with these cluster randomized trial is low take-up rates. And so this is our attempt to get away from that. We ask who is interested because then we expect that in the end, instead of just comparing a whole village with maybe 50% take-up to a whole village with a control village with zero take-up, we can compare the interested to the interested and then maybe get more power. This unfortunately doesn't work as we thought, so I'm not going to report a lot of those results. But that's the reason for this box right here. Then we do a baseline survey, we randomize the villages in treatment and control, and then we start the intervention in the treatment villages. We have only 46 villages, so it's 23 treatment villages. Treatment goes on for about 2 years, and after 2 years we do the endline survey, and then we start the intervention in the control villages. This was something our local partner required, and I mean, so that we implemented all the villages that they already had. It's kind of a randomized rollout. Right? So there are some details about randomization, and here's the point about the interested. Of course, the results you will see are, we oversample the interested, and then I display results with weights. We interviewed 1,700 or 1,800 households. We had a nutrition of only 3%. So here are our pre-specified outcome measures. So any development project you're going to visit or hear about, well, let's say 95% will have a logical framework matrix. That's kind of the language of choice in program management in development. Of course, many of you know this already, but it's just to say most of the projects where we see impact assessments will actually have someone who have sat down and thought about what do we think will be the effect of this project, how do we measure it, and what level will we expect to see. And so we took the logical framework matrix from this project and we used it as a basis for determining which variables to look at. So it doesn't, we're not tying our hands completely. There's some flexibility, as you can see, and here is increased food security, increased income generating activities, and improved household income. Each of those has some indicator. How hunger period is reduced. We measure that by just asking of the number of meals in some month and then adding it up, increase in the consumption of food. We look at how many meals did you eat yesterday, average number of income generating activities, we count the number of enterprises, increase in volume savings. We just look at liquid savings because that's more practical, I guess. Here is the share of living below the international poverty line has decreased. We use the USAID's PAT measure. Improved housing standards, we use an index, and household assets, we use acres of land. So, some baseline characteristics. Well, just to give you a little bit of meat to the people we were talking about, every household had 6 members. There are actually 1/3 that consumes less than 3 meals a day, and this is the non-hungry season of August, where everybody basically are at their richest point. So 1/3 is quite a lot, we think. And this is in the northern Malawi, so it's a quite poor region. 14% of the households are headed by women. The age of the head is 36 years, and schooling is very high. Northern Malawi has a reputation for a lot of schooling, so that it's well done. Mean food consumption was just below $1. There are actually 4 P's here because we use the poverty-adjusted purchase power parity by. That's just a minor piece. Okay, we test, of course, the balance. I'm not going to show you the table. No. I'm just going to tell you that most of them are balanced. Unfortunately, some of them are not balanced. Some of them are, these are our outcome measures, so we include those in the graph regressions I'll show you in a little while. Alright, so for the results, how long time do I have? Some time. For the results, first I'll present the results on take-up and usage, and then afterwards I'll present the results on outcome. So here's take-up. You can see baseline and end-line control villages and treatment villages, and you can kind of see when we started, there were actually some of these groups already. It's not so uncommon, and there have been some NGOs some years back, so 5% were in groups that are very similar to ours. At the end line, we have a significant increase in the control villages. That's of course quite unfortunate, but the increase in treatment villages was much larger, so that the difference between the two increases was 28 percentage points. So I guess the basic take-home point was just, this here is just that 28% we think is quite large. Almost half of the household think, okay, this is something I would like to try. And we have, this is basically what's going to drive our effect, so we also think that that's pretty good. Here's to show you these, like how bad it is that we have an increase over here at the control villages. I plotted the timeline here, where you can see this is the number of members, and this the control villages and the treatment villages, and you can see there's kind of a natural, these are the 5%, and then there's a natural increase here, and this one, when you start treatment, of course, there's a kink, and it just goes fast upwards, and here you can see there's also a kink, but it's much later. So the beginning of this intervention is just training. It takes 3 months before they even start giving out loans, so this is just an argument that the take-up in the control areas is probably not so serious. Here's some numbers on usage. Treatment village times end line. The interaction up here is just the net treatment effect, so the difference between the control and the treatment. And you can see that on the average they have 0.13 more loans in the control villages. So actually the number of total loans increases. The number of total loans for what you broadly can talk about as investment purposes also increases. So we think of that as quite some activity from this intervention. You can see over here that the total liquid savings, like money at home, money at a bank, money with a friend, things like this, actually does not increase. With total VSLA savings, I mean VSLA is the Village Savings and Loan Association, of course, and it's now in 1 minute, so I'll just hurry. This is share out. Let me just skip that at the end of the year. Money is in the cash box and it's shared out to all the members according to how much you save. So this is one key mechanism of how this project works, because you can see they time it just like Xavier's intervention. They time it just when they need input to agriculture in November and December. And 10,000 budget is a relatively large amount. Okay, let me just skip this. So we can now conclude there's large take-up and large usage in these VSLAs. Is there an effect on pre-specified outcomes? Not so much. This is the specification. Maybe I should just skip this. Yeah, it's relatively straightforward. This is it's a regression on the pooled data. So this constant will give us the control mean, and this will give us the balance, and this will give us the general end-line trend, and this rho will give us the intent to treat effect. I'll speed up. So here you can see the same LFA as before, and the only two effects are these two. We see a 13 percentage point decrease in the share of people eating less than 3 meals per day. So that's kind of the only place where we see a real outcome. So here we see an increase in the number of enterprises, but only at a 10% P value. On the other outcomes, we don't see any. So this is primary analysis. I'm in favor also of secondary analysis. So let me just give you some more non-pre-specified outcomes. This is agricultural production. Fertilizer use actually increases, which is consistent with the story that they use share out for input to agriculture. It also helps us maybe explain why we don't see any more effects. If it's input into agriculture, well then we would expect it to take more than one cycle of agriculture for us to really see an effect. So 2 years might just not be long enough. Yeah, I think I probably said all of this. Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Roy. This was also the paper. I think it's very interesting. It's an important question, and it was also very clear, which makes work easier for me, I guess, because it was very followed. We had some be very careful to specify all the methodological parts. Very careful. So I just have a few questions, just clarification questions. I mean, clearly you were worried about selection, that's why you designed it. I mean, you clearly fixed the problem, that's how you were doing it. I have just some questions about like randomization, the way you were doing it. Now you have a different picture from what you had in the paper, but I mean, you appear to have been doing the randomization during the baseline, like in the middle of the baseline, and actually, I know before that, you were asking people if they were interested in saving, but they could save this year or 2 years ahead. So I wasn't quite sure how that done is right, so it was not done clear. Then the other thing is learning and something else that we're not showing, which is your balanced results. I mean, we're also maybe I could suggest that you could have, say, means, standard errors, it is easy for us to understand like in which direction the effect goes. Sometimes the differences are small or significant. So I mean, basically you have I think maybe you could show us also some more variables like basic demographics, in the way. Yeah, so I was looking and I thought that maybe there were relatively few variables and quite several that were significantly different in treatment and control. Like the idea I was getting was that the treatment areas were, you had like two different measures of consumption, which was higher in the treatment. You had more like livestock. The broad picture I was taking, maybe because I'm not looking at everything, and maybe that's something that will show us, is that maybe people were already more better off and maybe more willing to save already to start with. And in fact, I mean, there is one of the things that I could not see from the paper is like there was a difference between willingness to participate in the association. It was like I could not see which way it was going. So that would be interesting for us to see. Maybe if you show more about that. Then you had a lot also on the pre-analysis plan, right? So and you said it's so you have it, the results, some of them are I guess after you stop telling us that you should not only publish the results, I think you have a good justification for not having to go for the other results that were not in your plan. And I mean just a minor thing, so maybe the other thing is that you wrote I was not sure about the exact number of questions because I think I understood that maybe wrongly that you had, like you initially had like 46, but 2 of the villages had no one to participate, and then you had 44. So maybe one thing that you could do with standard errors is like a correction for a small number of clusters, so that may be something that's just small comments. So maybe someone else wants to ask questions.
A couple of questions. Yeah. First, so was it ever the case that you went to a village, a treatment village, and for some reason the VSL just didn't work? I mean, there was just not enough, guys couldn't get together, or maybe there was some, basically, it just disbanded after a while. So the second one is, so if these guys, so it's kind of funny because they need the money. So come agricultural time, the agricultural season, at planting time, they all need money, right? And so when they divide it up, that's just. So I guess how do you reconcile that with the fact that you have loans that are rotating year round? So so like all the loans have to be paid before this thing, and so.
Sure.
And so, in a way, the fact, so I guess Roscas work well because people need money at different points in time, but if everybody needs the money at the same time, I mean,
yeah, I'll answer.
You would need to maybe, it'd be ideal to leverage it with, external finance or something.
All right, other questions? Yeah.
So, one is, given how close things are to Roscas, it would be really interesting to know what's happening financially or other participation in other groups. Sure. I don't know if you have to do that. I mean, it seems to me like you just think about what the immediate substitute is for this. This intervention is really, I've always seen it as just a clear what, so I was just thinking methodologically where the, trying to see where the differences were to help understand some of the differences in outcomes between what you're finding and what's been happening in the other studies so far, which I'm happy to send, by the way. They're not out yet as academic papers, but I have a report that I can send you from 3 of the countries.
Yeah, that'd be great.
There's another group of people that did a study in Burundi that I can send you.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be wonderful.
And the 5th country is Mali. So Burundi had a design which is closest to yours.
Okay.
In that there was this, that's where I'm unclear, it's in terms of identifying people up front who say they want to participate.
Yeah.
Which has the exact trade-off you said, and it's not clear what ended up happening. So
No.
That's my question.
Yeah.
So in Burundi, they did exactly what I think you did, which is got a bunch of people who said, yes, I'm going to join, and then said, aha, okay, come back in a year. And they have really big, Burundi has like these great big results, but they also have they also measured all the outcomes immediately after the share out. Really, they're just picking up like a mechanical share out effect. But so I think you need to. It doesn't sound like you have that issue, but the expectations issue is something which strikes me could be fundamentally different in terms of getting very different results. Where if you tell the control group you're going to get this thing in a year, you're going to get a bigger treatment effect than if you don't do that.
Yeah.
But what you gain from that is precision in terms of knowing who the control group to survey. Unfortunately, there's lots of other things that differ across these studies. I can just tell you in the four that we've done, we never said anything to anybody. So there was no expectation set in the control group. And likewise, we have crappy power. Right? We just don't know who joined. It's just a representative sample of the villagers. But yeah, a lot more it seems to be could be done to just understand who's joining into the circumstances and think about what flexibility do they have to push off investment. Oh, I'm sorry, I did have one. The last thing you said. I think just in terms of the econometrics, one thing I'd love to see is just cross-sectional, not the definitive, because you do have the imbalance on the outcome measure. So, I'd like, it would be comforting to see that it's not measurement error, that you're then just exacerbating.
That it's not measurement error.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and then you're not just picking up the fact that the measurement error is not correlated over time. So, so just do a cross section and control for the baseline value of the outcome measure.
Yeah.
Because this picks up on the one thing that the world is concerned most about in the result, which is that free result. That's what the advocates are going to love. Make sure it's solid.
The one thing that.
Oh, they're going to love that free result. Your eats less than 3 meals a day. And that is, this is an important measure of being, vulnerable. They're going to, you're not giving them much else to like. They're going to zoom in on that one and make sure it's solid.
Thanks.
Just wondering, box balance. You've got the loans coming out, all peaking at the same time.
Yeah.
You track if there's any balance left and compare over time.
For the next year?
Yeah. No, for the next period. They're all peaking at the same time. We were talking about, okay, was there an increase in wealth in the box? Was the wealth effect being captured by the box at some stage?
Well, increasing wealth in the box.
Well, what's happening is if we all take out at the same time, there's some left in the box.
So, okay, let me start on that issue with a little bit the same issue. So this is basically, can be explained by the way these groups work. So at the time of share out, there will be no money left in the box. So in the last 3 months, in the last 3 months, you can't take out new loans. So it's exactly as you said, you have to pay back your loan up to that point of the share out. So the primary reason for that is actually nothing to do with agriculture. That's, again, for the accountability purposes. So every year at that point, if someone wants to leave, they can just take their money and leave. So you ensure that there are nobody sitting in the group that really are not engaged or really don't want to leave. But it seems like it's fortunate for agriculture, right? Because then I kind of see it as you have the slow cycle of agriculture, but then on top you have a small cycle of trading and small businesses, which are the loans that you give out. But in the end, then you get the interest and all of your savings cashed out all at once, which you can use for agriculture. That's kind of the answer also to this question over here. So yeah, I guess the reason why I didn't see anything of interest was basically what we found so far didn't make any sense. Like we did a lot of interactions and stuff, and we couldn't make any sense of it. Of course, we should maybe report it anyways, and we'll do that when our analysis is a little bit deeper. In terms of the expectations, then I completely agree. Also, it's very possible that they are like delaying investment or maybe delaying consumption because we tell them, okay, in 2 years' time, we will have this intervention for you. In our case, our villages are so close to each other that they're going to find out anyway. So there's really, yeah, there's not too much to do about that, I think.
We can test it. You can see pre versus baseline versus,
yeah,
you know, so trends in the control.
Yeah,
You know,
we could.
are there anticipation effects or not?
Yeah, we could.
If they were that close to, there is, I mean, this is not a bad thing, just to be clear, but if you can actually identify it, it'd be great. I mean, they are, you can divide your control group then into the ones that are really close and the ones that are further. Because their model does argue that it's going to spontaneously sprout.
Yeah.
Because after all, Roscoe's don't have NGOs going around.
No.
So they're teaching people just a better way of doing something they already know.
So I'm sure I forgot some, well, I forgot the kind of question, but I guess I'll just take it.
We can talk afterwards.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be talking here today about the work that I've been doing with Pedro on the introduction of mobile banking in rural areas of Mozambique. So let me first start by motivating our work. Okay, so basically, if you want to send money to your family in rural areas, you'll have to rely on bus drivers, or you'll have to wait until you go home or someone really just goes home. Okay, so there's clearly a need for, or maybe we thought, there is the space for us to introduce a different alternative way of saving or receiving money in these areas. Okay. This is exactly what mobile banking allows. Okay, so basically you can deposit money in your mobile phone. Okay. You can use it to transfer money from your cell phone to someone else, far away, instantly, at a very low cost. And you can also use it to make payments and obviously to withdraw money to banking. So this looks like something that could be useful in these areas. Okay? Moreover, we know that M-Pesa has had a huge success in Kenya, and here we identifies in the areas where we are working, which is the southern provinces in Mozambique, we identify some characteristics that were in place in Kenya. Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to make something useful here. So that's what we are testing. So that's our motivation. Okay, so there is some literature. I won't be spending too much time on it since we don't have that much time, but basically the existing literature is mostly descriptive of this great success that we had in Kenya. But there has not been the opportunity to conduct a randomized controlled trial that provides credible evidence or evidence that we want to rely on to state that causally mobile banking has had good impact on these variables that we are using. Okay, so what are the research questions that we exploit here? Okay, so basically, as I said, this project is an impact evaluation, a randomized field experiment RCT of the introduction of mobile banking which is called M-Cash, that's the brand name, M-Cash, in rural locations of Mozambique. Okay, so basically we started by doing agent recruitment, okay, and then we are following, so basically we started with agent recruitment and then we do mobile banking dissemination for both the rural communities and the urban migrants, which is the thing that we are about to start belonging to these communities. Okay, so basically these are first results. Okay, so we have just finished now in August, and we're receiving some data that I'll present today. We received yesterday, and we worked on last week, so Javi only got our PowerPoint, but there are some of the results here. So, I mean, yeah, we have been working on this. We are working on this as we speak. speak, but we have the first part concluded. So basically, what we concluded so far was we have the agents ready for a few months, and now we have been working on the baseline, and we have been working, so recently we just finished doing the intervention, the dissemination in these rural locations. Okay? What are our main research questions? So they have to do obviously with adoption to start with. That's what everyone says, it might be a problem, because adoption has been typically low when introduced mobile banking outside of Kenya, right? So typically, obviously. And something else that we are interested in is remittance behavior. So remittances from these rural to urban rural areas was one of the drivers, arguably, of the success in Kenya. So we want to see if that can happen here. As I said, we are focusing on the southern provinces of Mozambique, where there is a strong migration corridor to the Maputo city. Okay? And finally, we want to see whether we have any impact on savings. Okay, so as I said, this is basically ongoing work. So what we present here are the first reactions that we got from the field. Let me review the results. One of our favorite results is this. Okay, so we were offering money to people in their cell phones, and we told them, if you would rather have the money in your hand as cash, you can do it. And only 20% said that they wanted to take the money out of their phone. So 80% were choosing to keep money in their cell phone. Then, in terms of information and trust outcomes, what we find is a clear improvement in financial literacy, which was a part of our intervention, and knowledge about damage. Okay, so this is a part of the dissemination we have just conducted. We also find, because we measure trust in various dimensions or in various methods, and we also find an increase in trust in some dimensions, namely in the local agent, which is typically the shopkeeper for the village, and also in MCEL's financial services. Okay, so basically, let me just to clarify some settings. MCEL is the telecommunications firm for the country, and then they have this subsidiary, a financial institution, which is Carteira Móvel, and then they have a product which is branded Cash. Okay, so let you know what I'm talking about. So when I'm talking MCEL, this is like Safaricom for Kenya, so this is telecommunication company. So their financial services, yes, trust in them to increase with our intervention. Okay, then what we did was some games where we tried to get, again, first reactions to the introduction of MCEL. So basically what we find here is that there seems to be an increase in the marginal willingness to send remittances. Okay? So, and I'll explain this with some more detail. The same thing, I mean, we don't get strong results in terms of saving, but there, I'll show you that more results. Okay, so basically, I mean, we like this result. 80% of people that like to keep the money, even though they know that they can have it in their hands immediately, and also there are these clear results on financial literacy, on trust, and on these willingness to send. Okay, so this is the outline. I'll try to be brief about. So let me tell you first about the experimental design, and then I'll show you the results. Okay, so here let me basically skip. MCEL is the biggest software company. It has around 80% of the 5 million subscribers to welfare services in the country. So the geographical coverage extends of the self-services extends to 80% of the population. This is a competitive market in which you have also Vodacom, and now there is a third operator, which is mobile banking became legal, so regulation was issued in 2010. Yeah, 2000. But it is working only, or as of now, it is mostly working in urban areas. Okay, so it's not spread out very much. So basically this gave us the opportunity to randomize where it is going to be placed in rural areas. So we were lucky to find this soon before it started. Okay, it was already, so hopefully it was in that interval where you can launch the experiment. So basically we were lucky to be able to have an agreement with them. So that allowed us to choose with them, to choose randomly locations, rural locations where we established, or where we made available language. Okay.
Just to understand what you need a bank account, you have to make the deposits, you pay a fee when you do the transaction.
I guess that's important. The beauty of it is that you do not. Okay, so basically the way it works is that we identify the main shopkeeper at this village, and Amstel, or Catermon actually, signs an agreement with this person so that he is the M-Cash agent. The M-Cash agent is the local bank, the new branch. That's what it does. So people, they just have to have a cell phone. They can register immediately, and it's like as if they had a bank account in their phone. So they do not need any other bank. Okay, so let me just move on. So basically, then what we did was we randomized these the treatment areas, and then we have we conducted a baseline survey, and we have these behavioral measures. Okay, so we have behavioral measures where we observe actions related to M-Cash. Okay, so I'll talk about these in a second. And then we have games where we assess the marketing willingness of people to use M-Cash for savings and remittances. And also, this is what we just got, which is administrative records for mobile banking. So this is what you do not have. You just have a little table at the end to show you about this. So it's like 1 month ago it finished, so it's really fresh. Okay, so treatment, part 1, agent. You arrive to this village and you identify who could be an M-Cash agent. Okay. We started like this some time ago. Basically, what we were looking for is someone with full shelves. Okay? So someone that must have liquidity, because we will be the banker for this village. So you should have full shelves. You have to have some documentation. Okay? Otherwise, Amstel or the model would not sign him or her. Even as well as agents. Okay? And he needed to have background. Okay? So this was someone that was not a regular person in this group. So, okay, so for the time, so we did this March, May, and then there was some training, okay, in which the contract was signed. There were materials handed out like posters, and there was a briefing on what they could do and how they operated. So basically, training for the here you have it.
Why does agent have to have a bank account?
When we recruit you.
What's the why?
Why? Well, because it makes it easier for the model to cooperate with this person. Even for the way that they manage like the inflow and the transfers for this person to the deposit. And I think most importantly, actually, is the fact that this agent that is going to be the banker for the village, he himself knows what the bank is and how a bank account works. I think that helps a lot.
Just comparing to the Kenyan case, I don't think all agencies have an account.
Yes, this is. I think we learned a great deal with the Kenyan experience, and so we are really learning. I mean, liquidity we know is very important. It's also important to have someone that understands that has a little more financial literacy than regular. Okay, so let me just speed up, otherwise I'm going to stay here for too long. Okay, now treatment part 2. So after the agent, we went to these communities, and basically we taught everyone, or the people, that there are two ways. So first of all, community theater and meeting. Okay, so we gathered people, we made like some photos here. So we made these meetings where we explained people what was M-Cash, what it was doing. There was community theater in both languages, in both Portuguese and Xangano, which is the local language for most of these places. So I mean, it was an occasion for people really to get to know what it is, how it works, and how they could register. Okay, and then of course we had individual treatment. And here we had this leaflet. We had, I mean, this is one of the leaflets we were distributing, and we were telling each person how she could do each of the things that NH does. Okay, like how they could register, how they could deposit money, how could they check their balance, how they could pay for buy things from the shop, and most importantly, we did not only explain how to do this, we did it. We gave money to the people so that they would try, that they would experience, and they would understand really, I mean, they would see that it worked. Okay, so we were giving something like roughly $3, okay, and that's just see. I mean, we gave them other information, but the most important thing is this experimentation. Okay, so yeah, so basically all of these steps, like self-registration, actual deposit, actual balance checking, purchase, and then happened. Okay, so we not only explained how they could do it, but they did it actually. Okay, and then we described also that they could do a withdrawal and that they could do a transfer. Okay, so that they would know exactly what they could do with this. This was treatment, different dimensions. Then I think briefly, very briefly over something and immunization. So basically we have 102 enumeration areas in 3 provinces of Mozambique, the southern province of Mozambique. Our sampling framework was the 2008 census, but we had to make sure that they were, on the one hand, covered. They had cell phone coverage, okay? And we had to check it actually because it was not always as it was supposed to be, and this was some delays actually. And then we had to make sure there was a bank branch in the district where people were living. Okay, so that we would not, so that the agent could actually easily go to the bank if he had that. Okay, so I mean everything else was like standard household recruiting. We have 2011 individuals, households. Okay, so basically the way the randomization was done is like we picked pairs that were matched on observable characteristics that we had, and then we randomized the treatment within each pair, and we conducted treatment in 51 in the impression. Okay. Now, one thing that we did was we did not submit individual treatment, okay, where we would explain to people and where we would have people experiencing M-cash transactions to everyone. Okay, so this is a group of, there is a group of targeted individuals within the treatment areas. Okay, so we're calling it lazy. Okay, just for you to have an idea of what we were doing, so this is the whole of Mozambique, and we were, the point it has done too much use, so battery is a bit down, but as you can see it. Okay, so control areas in yellow, treatment areas in red, and you can see that we covered quite a lot. In the main rows is here, there is a blue row here, chocolate, and that's what explains basically where we are. So, and this also makes clear that if you want to think then about other places where this could work, we are not in the very remote areas of the country. We are in rural areas, people take hours to get to the village where there is the branch, the main branch, but it's not like we were far away in very, very remote areas. There's a balance. Now, measurements. I think this is something where we tried to innovate a little so that we could have some results now to show. Okay, so basically the first thing we did was this idea of, well, you have 50 multipliers, so after all of those transactions, we left people with 50 multipliers, $2 in their cell phone. Now, what do you want to do? You want to keep your money in the cell phone, you want to take it out. Okay, so, and we were there, our numerators were there to help the person take the money out immediately in the agent. Okay? So it's not like it would be something very hard and complicated or possible. Then we have something else, which is what we call the SMS and cash. Where basically, we offer people the opportunity, individuals will propose to send an SMS saying what part of Mcash they like most. Okay? So basically, the incentive here was that if we received many SMS from that location, well then the firm offering Mcash would try to improve the work of Mcash in that location. Okay? So here we have this binary often send SMS Mcash. And we have, so this is what we were giving, this is the leaflet that we distributed when we were offering people the opportunity to send this SMS. So basically there is this phone number here, and the date was 31st of August. It's very recent, as you can see. Okay, so this is the date. Okay, then there was a second. There was a second SMS that people could send. And here, because we are very interested in knowing whether we will have transfers from migrants. Okay? So here, the SMS Mcash migrant offered people the opportunity to send to ask their family member in the city of Maputo to send the SMS. And if that happened, that SMS would say that they knew that they could transfer money with Mcash, and basically, if that would happen, we would pay 15 ticais, $2 for both the migrant and the family member that we are with. Okay? This is the leaflet. And then we have other questions. Okay? So basically, on information and trust. So, first, we have survey outcomes. Okay? So we'll list, we try to be careful doing this, but maybe I'm not going to spend too much time on it. And then we had games, behavioral games, where we try to measure with a measure that is not the survey. It's not just what people are telling us, it's what they do. Okay? So that's the aim of this. So here, what we offered was, here you have 20 meticais, these notes, so roughly $1, and you can keep it or you can save it. What do you want to do? That was the first question. Okay? And then, if the person will say save it, then he could choose. And he could choose between depositing it in their Mcash account or put it inside this envelope, okay? That would like seal. And basically, what we told the people is that if they would keep it sealed until our next visit, we will pay them some interest. Okay? So basically, they would receive 10, it's like 50% interest on whatever the period that takes out for us to come and visit again. Okay? So this is what we call the savings effort, measuring this marginal willingness to save. Then we have the remittance game. Okay? And here, people could choose whether to keep, again, another 20, so we spent some money with this, I can say. So whether you want to keep the notes or whether you want to send it to someone. Okay? Send it to someone in Maputo. And here we have to screen for people having family in Maputo. And basically when we did it, if people chose to send it, then we would ask, would you want to send it to them cash, or do you want us to bring it? Us should be trustworthy. We were giving the notes anyway, right? But anyway, this was like a second step question. Okay? And then what we also did is what we call the mandatory remittance scheme, where people were not allowed to keep the note. We told them, you must send this note, or this one, these 20 meticais, okay? Do you want to do it via Mcash or via us? Okay, so here it's a really measure of adoption. Okay? No longer to see the marginal willingness to save or transfer, but just adoption. Okay, so yeah, this is the envelope that we were where they put the money first. Okay, so let me just say a few words. So we're just doing here simple differences. The way the regression number tables, they all have the same setup. It's always like this. Okay, so simple differences, then another column with geographical dummies, another column with individual controls. Actually, we do not have regression controls in place here. I'm pretty confident it will make a difference. You never know what it will be. Okay, so first, results. You cannot see them very well. You cannot really see them at all, right? Okay, so basically first balance. Anyway, I mean, we got rather good results here. They were first are here. It was the chicken and the goats. Okay, chicken and goats are not balanced. We also have the generator ownership. Because basically, we were very happy to see that. Yes, this way. Okay, then simply differences between the treatment targeted. So remember that we have a part in the people that we interviewed in treatment areas. Not all of them were subject to individual treatment. Okay, so here we are only looking at those that were subject to individual treatment. So that's what we have here. So different between. This is for some of the variables that you would think we were interested to look at the outcomes, and we have some differences. Okay, some results. Okay, so this is the result on whether people want to withdraw their money, and we see here that people, roughly 20% of people wanted to withdraw their money. That means that 80% decided to. Then we asked, these are just the survey questions on, this is one of the questions, whether people intended to use them cash, 63%, that's expectable, I would say. That's so nice. And then we have SMS and cash, SMS and cash money. Okay, so these are people's intentions. Okay, we recently got that data from the actual data, and actually we do not find too much of an effect. Here you can see as well that even with stated intentions of sending SMS and cash and SMS and cash migrant, we do not see so much, especially for the migrant. That's exactly what we got now when we received the SMS. Okay, so we don't have really significant results here. Then Mcash mandatory remittance. Here we have at least 50% of people saying they would want to keep it, and some results. Okay. Okay. So now information and trust. Here the results were very strong. Basically, we saw clear improvements in financial literacy and knowledge about cash. And on trust as well, as I said before. So we have it. We don't have results on trust for many variables, but we have it for the local shop there and for trust in the MSL tax. Okay, so this was phrased this way so that we could ask it as well in control areas. Okay, now for the games. So for the games, what we see here is that we have some results. Okay. 10% significance result for remittances, so people do seem more willing to send remittances, and when they have to choose whether they want to use Mcash to remit money to their families, they definitely go for it. So this is the strong result. Okay, so it has an adoption, even though only a marginal result in terms of augmenting the total amount of remittances. For savings, okay, we are not getting. We do not get that overall savings are increasing, but we do get that Mcash is so good for adoption. And some results for remittances, which is what we are hoping for. Let me show you the administrative data. So this is actual data that we got like 1 month after, and basically what we have is that, okay, so this is basically the dummy, whether people use Mcash or not, then the value, and then the number of transactions. Okay, so things are only significant when we look at the, first let me look at the means. Okay, so the means tell you that about 30% of people are using Mcash, and then we have, in terms of value, the value is about 195, so like $4 on average, and they conducted on average roughly 2 transactions this past month. Okay, so this is the actual data from the Excel records. Okay, so let me just conclude here. We also have the spillover effect on the level we have targeted, but here we do not really get too much. So I'll just skip and go on to the concluding remarks. Okay, so basically what we think we found was clear comparative evidence in favor of F-cash adoption. Okay, we saw that the market willingness to send remittances has increased. Okay, so availability of F-cash seems to potentially increase the amount of remittances sent. This is something that we would expect if there is substitution from traditional channels into F-cash. Okay, although this is something that we'll keep working on. This is not as clear for settlement. Okay, so what we are doing, our future research, we are now doing dissemination with other migrants. And we'll conduct more another experiment. Maybe I should not go on and on. But we are just going to see what methods for other migrants to send remittances. And then we'll continue measuring other outcomes. Okay, let me just show the face of the many people in the room that were spending their summer working on the project. Okay, so thank you very much, all.
So this is very much work in progress, but very, very, very interesting. So I guess, so takeaways, oh God. Okay, let's go here. So, sorry about that. All right, so one result that they find interesting is that of adoption. I have to confess I didn't follow quite the result, how exactly they do that. I think it's just a question about what you want to do. And that's fine, except that, so I'm very glad that you have admin data, and I would rely on that. Basically, I mean, the way I understand it is there's some training that takes place, and in there you actually explain that savings is good. And so, you know, if I tell you savings is great, you should save, and then I tell you, okay, you have 50 MT, what would you like to do? Are you sure you want to take the money out? I mean, because really savings is very good. So you know, it's unclear to me, you know, what, you know, so, and the fact that the guy is there, so anyway, there could be some sort of experimental type effect. So admin data would really be better. One of the things that I think I picked up on the results was actually, so trust in the neighbor is actually declined, and that's actually interesting. I don't know what to make of it. I mean, if this is robust or not, but you know, one could argue that this mobile banking actually raises the value of autarky. And therefore, it could lead actually to fewer transactions in the social network. Okay, so I mean outside the immediate household. So you know, if I'm thinking of neighbors, if I'm thinking of, so I guess the question is, thinking more, I guess in line with the Malawi paper. So you know, are these balances in this Mcash public? Are requests from neighbors more likely to be turned down? And so these could have spillovers on non-users. And maybe would be consistent with this result. Okay. Now, so on the remittance game, so again, interesting, but maybe so if I understand correctly, you're going to rural areas and you're asking, okay, here's some money. Would you like to would you like to transfer it to Maputo, the capital, where presumably the migrant is? So I would, typically the flows would be the other way around, right? So from the guy that's working his tail off, sending to the guy in the village. So this is like, again, looking at a sort of reverse transfer. So I don't, so that's fine, but what, okay. Now, but this is, so typically, I mean, again, if this is anything like Kenya, you would have the male in Maputo and the female, the spouse in the rural village. So this actually has implications that we can talk about in terms of things to explore. One is again on the game per se. There could be a different marginal propensity to consume and to remit between a gift that I've not done anything to receive and hard-earned money from the migrant, right? And so anyway, that's something to bear in mind. Now, so we're talking about, after all, this amazing innovation basically lowers transaction costs, so what happens? I want to know, using Lightning data, I want to know what happens to the frequency and amount of transfers, right? So is it true that frequency, because of transaction costs are lower, frequency increases and the amount of transfers increase? And if that's the case, so two things can happen. One is there's perhaps better ability to smooth consumptions back home, but also if net transfers increase, you actually would expect higher net income. And these things actually could have implications for labor supply of the wife that one could potentially check, right? And it's clearly unclear. So it's not obvious what would happen, right? So on the one hand, I mean, you can think that this is, actually you could have some sort of Samaritan dilemma going on here where, I just sit at home and get all this money, so I'm just going to squander it. On the other hand, I have this cushion, I have this insurance coming in, I have this buffer, so I may actually want to go out and generate income, maybe set a business or whatever, right? So this would be actually quite interesting, I think, to look at. All right. So another thing is migration patterns. So before migrants, I guess there's some evidence that migrants, when it was pre-M-Pesa, pre-M-Cash, migrants would actually travel home and give the money, right, to avoid the driver, to avoid this, that. So now they can send it. So if they send the money, these could actually change the spells of migration, right? So maybe they're spending less time. So basically they're spending more time in Maputo, and there's they see their families less often. These could actually have implications for for a whole host of things, right? Now the other thing is maybe mobile banking actually encourages net migration. We don't know, and hopefully you have data not only of migrants but also of other things. Now one thing that's interesting, and this is inspired by work of Dean Yang and authors, is that so these guys send money through these, but they have presumably little control over what's done with this money. And so again, it would be in this context of husbands sending money to wives, it would be interesting to understand basically, one, whether or not there's asymmetric information, and two, whether one could think about ways of tinkering with that, right? And then so another thing is whether there's any, so whether the government is contemplating using these to transfer safety net programs using that, in which case you already have another source of so two caveats on this. So one is this thing about the cash flow. So let's talk about the agents now. So presumably transfers are made for recurring things like income support, but also for lump sum expenditures such as fees and agriculture inputs and whatnot. So you have here a situation where all the money is taken out pretty much around the same time. Are these agents sophisticated enough to do that? Because if they don't have a good cash management, then that's going to undermine the thing. And one thing that I found interesting, actually, you encourage these guys to also go in the shop and consume. I mean, I know that's done for education purposes, but basically, if one of the things you want to foster is savings, would it be, I mean, so I don't know whether you have variation in the kinds of agents, right? So if I'm thinking about, a candy store agent, an agent that's in a candy store versus an agent that's like in an agro-dealer shop, right? So whether there would be, basically if I'm surrounded by temptation goods and I get, this transfer, am I just going to go and buy a lot of stuff versus, anyway, something to explore. Okay, so, thanks a lot. Oh, sorry, and the timeline would be important when you write the paper, because I don't know when So I don't know when the games were played relative to when the intervention was actually launched, when they open up. So
okay, starting from the beginning. So the withdrawal experiments, yes, of course, they have just been told that something is good. At least this is not a survey, so I should just know, like, a comment taken. This is not just a survey answer, the survey outcome. It is, I mean, this is a behavior measure in the sense that there was actually money, and they saw that they could have the money they had. They had been playing foreign money coming in and out, so they knew that if they wanted, they could have the money. This was actual money that they could have. So I agree with you. Yes, we were there still. There could be some bias, but hopefully this was at least better than just the plain survey measure. Then the decreased trust in neighbors. I have an explanation for that, which is one of the things that we were emphasizing in our popular theaters was Mcash was very good because it's safe. Because some neighbors, some person like some people like the uncle or the nephew could come and take your money. Like the one that you usually keep in a pot, usually it's like in a pot buried underground. So that could be something that could actually trigger this, I think. Then balances in Mcash are private, so that could be a motive. Yes, I think that's a good explanation. It would be good for us to think about ways of trying to test. That's great. Then the inverse flow. Yes, it's true. This remittance game is a bit the opposite remittance flow that we are expecting to have. But what we are thinking here is that this could be interpreted in one way, signal, and the other, this could be a test of whether this thing works. So someone is giving you money for you to test whether Mcash works, so that could be a motive. That's what we thought when we were designing this game. Then the gift versus the hard-earned money. One thing that we see now in this administrative data is that people have been depositing money. And these 100 metrics that you see there are more than what we were giving them. So this is, people are putting money there of their own. And frequency and amount of transfers, this is obviously something that we are interested in checking later. The same for the other outcomes. Yes, it will be very interesting to see what happens now when we go back there maybe sometime and see what happens to egg supply, to the type of migration. Control is something that we can still think about, I guess, although too many treatments. So we are testing basic things because we always can put too much in it. Liquidity of agents. That's a big concern, obviously, because our concern from the beginning, when we were setting the agents, one thing that, and that has been already a concern for the data model in the city. Okay? Even in the city, they are worried about it. So they are setting a system on super agents that go and visit the agents. So they have a system where they see when people are down, and they can go there and try them out. For the moment, for this first month, the people have, the agents have a bank account, and they should be typically not, it should not be too far away or too inconvenient to possible to go there. Exploit agent variation. I'm not sure we can do it at this moment, but still, thank you so much. And the question about cycle time, so basically it was done, we had a bit about it, so we had, it was done after. Okay. If anyone else has questions or comments? Otherwise, stand up again and say thank you so much everyone for being here, for being part of the work. We'll hear some more about NSL in the next one. Thank you.